Okay, so you're heading down to Key West, huh? That drive down the overseas highway is pretty iconic, but we thought, why not make it even better?
Yeah, like think of us as your audio tour guide.
Exactly. So we've been digging into all the cool stuff about Key West. The history, the culture, the must-see spots. You'll be a total Key West pro by the time you get there.
You'd be like, been there, done that, got the t-shirt before you even arrive, ready for the deep dive.
Absolutely. Let's get into it.
Mm,
You know, even the name Key West has a story, right? Comes from the Spanish name Cayo Hueso, which means bone cay.
kind of creepy, right?
Yeah, like a pirate's graveyard or something?
Apparently, early explorers found a ton of human bones there, probably from native inhabitants. And it was the westernmost key with fresh water, so it makes sense that people would have gathered there.
It's like prime real estate, even way back then.
Totally. But before the 19th century, you had folks connected to the Calusa and Tequesta tribes living in the Keys. It wasn't until 1763, when Florida went from Spain to Britain, that things really started to change. Yeah, the last Native American residents, they were Calusa refugees, and they actually got sent to Cuba. Imagine that, being uprooted like that.
It's a whole other chapter of history before the Key West we know today. Then for a while, between 1763 and 1821, it was kind of like the Wild West down there.
No, literally, more like the Wild Keys.
True, there were a few permanent residents, but it was mostly Cubans and Bahamians stopping by for fishing, turtling, and even salvaging stuff from shipwreck.
Oh, and let's not forget the smugglers and privateers. Those guys were always up to something.
Talk about a free-for-all. But then things started getting a bit more official with all the ownership claims, and it gets a little messy, frankly.
Yeah, you could say that. So in 1815, this Spanish naval officer, Juan Pablo Salas, he got Key West deeded to him by the governor of Cuba. But then, a few years later, Florida became a U.S. territory. And Salas, he sold the island not once, but twice.
Wait, he sold it twice. Who buys an island twice?
Right. First, he sold it to General John Geddes, and then to this businessman, John W. Simonton. Can you imagine the lawyers involved in that?
Must have been a legal nightmare.
Total headache. But Simonton, he was a smart guy. He knew Key West was valuable. It had this deep harbor, perfect for ships, and it sat right on the Straits of Florida. That's the narrow passage between the Atlantic and the Gulf of Mexico. Controlling that was huge for trade.
So basically, it was like the Gibraltar of the West.
Exactly, and the U.S. wasn't going to let that slip away. So on March 25, 1822, Lieutenant Commander Matthew C. Perry, he shows up with the USS Shark and plants the American flag. Key West was officially part of the United States. No one even argued, apparently.
Wow, just like that.
Yep. Perry even tried to renounce everything, but those names didn't stick. Then you had Commodore David Porter come in and basically rule the place like a military dictator for a while. He was cracking down on piracy and the slave trade.
So from a free-for-all to military rule in just a few years, talk about a turnaround.
And then you had these entrepreneurial folks who started shaping Key West into what we know today.
Yeah, Simonton, the guy who bought the island twice, he started selling off pieces of land.
He sold to John Mountain, who sold to Pardon C. Green. He became a big deal, even mayor later on. There was John Whitehead, who, funnily enough, was the one who told Simonton to buy Key West in the first place. And then John Fleming. These guys were like the founding fathers of Key West.
And then Whitehead's brother, William E.D. Whitehead, he was the one who laid out the streets, right?
Yep. 1829, he mapped out the whole island. And guess what? Many of those street names, like Duval Street, named after Florida's first territorial governor, they're still used today. It's amazing how much of that original plan stuck around. And get this, in the 1830s, Key West was the richest city per capita in the whole U.S.
Seriously, Key West, the richest city. That's crazy.
Crazy, right? It was all thanks to those maritime industries. Wrecking, salvaging cargo from shipwrecks, that was big business. Then you had fishing, turtling, and eventually salt production. The sun down there was perfect for evaporating seawater and making salt.
It sounds like a total boomtown. But I bet there were some rough patches too, right? Like hurricanes.
Oh yeah, hurricanes were a constant threat. In 1846, a massive one slammed into Key West, causing major damage. But they rebuilt, and in 1852, they built St. Mary's Star of the Sea, the first Catholic church, which eventually had the first Catholic school in South Florida.
Signs of a growing community, for sure. Then the Civil War came along and changed everything, or at least most things.
You'd think Key West would have sided with the Confederacy since Florida seceded, but it was a Union stronghold the entire war. The naval base there was just too important.
A Union island in a Confederate state, that must have been tense.
Oh, absolutely. You had locals sympathetic to the Confederacy, some even flying Confederate flags, but you also had a large population of free black people, and that number grew during the war as enslaved people escaped to Union protection. Fort Zachary Taylor was crucial for the Union, and they even built the East and West Martello Towers for defense, though they never saw any action. It was a really complex time.
Absolutely. You mentioned the salt industry earlier. What happened to that?
Oh, it boomed for a while, especially before the Civil War. But the war disrupted everything, and then in 1876, another hurricane destroyed the salt pans. That, plus competition from new salt mines on the mainland, pretty much killed the industry in Key West.
That's a shame. It seems like every time Key West got on its feet, something knocked it back down.
Mhm.
But it always bounced back. Speaking of bouncing back, how did the Cuban influence come into play?
Oh, that's huge. Key West is closer to Havana than Miami, so it's always been a natural landing spot for Cubans. During the 10 Years' War in Cuba, a ton of Cubans came to Key West, and they brought their cigar factories with them.
So Key West became a cigar town.
Oh yeah, it was a major cigar hub. And that Cuban influence, it's still everywhere in Key West, from the food to the architecture. Key West even had Cuban mayors. And Jose Marti, the Cuban revolutionary leader, he founded the Cuban Revolutionary Party right there in Key West. Later, Key West saw more Cuban refugees during the Mariel boat lift and other events.
Wow, so it's a real melting pot of cultures.
Absolutely. It really is. But let's not forget about the Great Fire of 1886. It wiped out a lot of those cigar factories and homes. Some rebuilt, but others moved their operations to Tampa's Ybor City, so the cigar industry started shifting away from Key West. Still, at the end of the 1880s, Key West was Florida's biggest and richest city. It even played a role in the Spanish-American War, with the USS Maine setting sail from Key West to Havana, which of course led to, well, you know the rest.
It's amazing how Key West has always been right in the middle of things, both good and bad.
Right, it's this tiny island with a huge history. Now, as we move into the 20th century, things started to change rapidly.
Like with transportation, getting to Key West used to be a whole ordeal, right?
Oh, yeah, you had to take a boat or try your luck navigating those shallow waters. But then, in 1912, Henry Flagler finished his overseas railway connecting Key West to the mainland. That was a game changer.
Imagine the first train pulling into Key West. What a sight that must have been.
I know, right? But sadly, it didn't last. In 1935, the Labor Day hurricane, one of the most powerful hurricanes ever recorded, ripped through the Keys and destroyed much of the railway. Hundreds of people died, including a lot of World War I vets who were working on projects down there. It was a terrible tragedy.
And that's where the overseas highway comes in.
Exactly. They built the highway right on top of the old railway's foundations. Completed in 1938, it became an extension of U.S. Route 1. Even President Roosevelt drove down to check it out. It was a symbol of resilience and progress.
And then World War II happened, and Key West was back in the spotlight.
Big time. Over 14,000 ships went through its harbor during the war. The population exploded with military personnel and workers. It was bustling.
And then after the war, Key West became a presidential getaway thanks to Harry S. Truman.
Yeah, good old Harry. He loved Key West. Starting in 1946, he made the Little White House his winter White House and spent a lot of time there.
It's amazing to think about all the history that's happened in that one little house.
Truly. And then there's a whole Contra-Public thing. Remember that?
Oh, yeah. That's classic Key West.
So in 1982, the Border Patrol set up a blockade on US 1 trying to catch undocumented immigrants, but it caused huge traffic jams, hurting tourism. So Key West, in true Key West fashion, declared independence as a form of protest. They even surrendered to a naval officer dressed as a pirate.
Sounds about right.
Right. It was all tongue-in-cheek, of course, but it worked. They got the blockade removed. And now they celebrate Contra-Public independence every April 23rd. It's a whole big party.
Key West. Theories about fun.
Exactly. Of course, it hasn't all been fun and games. Hurricanes are a real threat. Hurricane Georges in 1998 and Irma in 2017 caused major damage. It's a reminder that this paradise comes with risks.
That's true. So we've covered a lot of history. What about the geography? What should people know as they're driving down?
Well, Key West sits at 24 degrees, 33 minutes, 55 seconds north latitude, and 81 degrees, 46 minutes, 33 seconds west longitude, right in the Straits of Florida. The island itself is about 4 miles long and a mile wide, covering just over 4 square miles. It's the southernmost city in the continental U.S. and the westernmost island in the Florida Keys connected by highway.
So tiny, but so much going on.
Right. And the city of Key West includes more than just the main island. You've got Dredger's Key, also called Sigsbee Park, Fleming Key, Sunset Key, and part of Stock Island. And then there's Newtown, built on filled-in salt ponds. That's where you'll find most of the shopping centers, newer homes, and the airport.
So that's where all the modern stuff is.
Pretty much. It's a different vibe from Old Town.
Makes sense.
Key West is also right where the Atlantic Ocean meets the Gulf of Mexico. Imagine that, standing on a beach and having 1 foot in each.
That's pretty cool.
And get this, in the winter, the ocean water around Key West is the warmest in the continental U.S., around 75 to 77 degrees Fahrenheit. Perfect for swimming.
That sounds amazing.
The climate is tropical savanna, so you have wet and dry seasons. The wet season runs from May to October, and the dry season is from November to April. It's actually the driest city in Florida overall, believe it or not. But those hurricanes, yeah, they're a real concern. Low-lying islands and hurricanes don't mix.
Not a good combination.
Nope. So while you're soaking up the sunshine and the history, remember to be aware of hurricane season.
Good advice. Now let's talk about the fun stuff.
Yeah.
Things to see and do. I feel like we could do a whole episode on that alone.
Oh, easily. But let's hit the highlights. You can't miss Old Town. It's like stepping back in time.
I've heard it's full of those charming little houses.
Oh, yeah, those classic wooden bungalows,
Mm.
metal roofs, wood siding, gingerbread trim, pastel colors, louvered shutters, big porches. And a lot of them were built between 1886 and 1912, so they've seen some things.
I bet they have some stories to tell.
And within Old Town, you've got different neighborhoods. Bahama Village, southwest of Whitehead Street, is full of Afro-Bahamian history. The Meadows, northeast of the White Street Gallery District, is more residential, a bit quieter. And then you've got some amazing antebellum structures still standing, like the oldest house built in the 1830s, and the Audubon House in Tropical Gardens, which used to belong to a wealthy wrecking pilot.
Speaking of history, you can't forget about all the military stuff.
Definitely. Fort Zachary Taylor Historic State Park is a must-see. They've got original Civil War cannons, and it's a great place to explore. Then there are the East and West Martello Towers, built during the Civil War but never used. Now the East Martello Tower is a museum with local artifacts and even a creepy doll named Robert. Don't forget the Key West Lighthouse. It's a museum now with amazing views of the island.
I love a good lighthouse.
Yeah.
And Key West has some literary history too, right? With Ernest Hemingway.
Oh yeah, big time. You can visit the Ernest Hemingway home and museum where he lived and wrote during the 1930s. They even have 6-toed cats descended from his own cats. Don't miss the Harry S. Truman Little White House, where he spent a good chunk of his presidency. And there are tons of other historic houses, like the Porter House, the Gato House, the Benjamin Curry House, the Southernmost House, and the Fogarty Mansion. Each one has its own story to tell.
It's like a living history book. And even the cemetery is unique, right?
Totally. It's from 1847 and sits near Solaris Hill, which is the highest natural point on the island, a whole 18 feet above sea level. But the soil is sandy, so they have above-ground tombs. And get this, a lot of the tombstones have funny or quirky epitaphs. It's like they're still cracking jokes from beyond the grave. And there's a plot for some of the victims of the USS Maine explosion, too.
Wow, that's both somber and interesting.
It really is. Moving on, you've also got the Casa Marina area, named after the Grand Casa Marina Hotel, which opened in 1921. There's the Reynolds Street Pier, Higgs Beach, the West Martello Tower with the Key West Garden Club, the White Street Pier for fishing, and Rest Beach if you just want to chill.
So many beaches.
And of course, you can't forget the southernmost point buoy. Gotta get that photo.
Even if it's not technically the southernmost point.
Yeah, that's the thing. It says 90 miles to Cuba, but it's actually closer to 95. The real southernmost point is Whitehead Spit on the Truman Annex, but you can't get there. Ballast Key, a private island, is actually the southernmost, and for public access, the beach at Fort Zachary Taylor State Park is the farthest south you can legally go.
Good to know. You mentioned the Key West Public Library earlier. What's so special about it?
Well, it's been around since 1853. Its current location on Fleming Street dates back to 1959. But the coolest part, in the 1960s, they had a bookmobile called Spoonbill that traveled all over the Keys. They even have a letter from Jimmy Buffett thanking them for the inspiration he found there.
Talk about community outreach. And then there's Duval Street, the heart of Key West.
Ah, Duval Street. It runs 1.1 miles from the Gulf to the Atlantic, and it's packed with shops, galleries, restaurants, bars, and everything in between. It's where the party's at.
And for a quieter, more reflective experience, there's the historic seaport.
Yeah, it's a great place to stroll around, watch the boats, and maybe spot some tarpon feeding. They have this huge Wailing Wall mural there by Robert Weiland. And if you're a Jimmy Buffett fan, his old recording studio is there too.
A must-see for parrot heads.
For sure. And for the best sunset views, head to Mallory Square. Every evening, it's packed with people watching the sun go down. Street performers, musicians, food vendors, it's a whole scene.
It sounds magical.
It really is. Now, we can't talk about Key West without mentioning the people. The term conch is something you'll hear a lot.
Yeah, what exactly does that mean?
It refers to Key West residents, especially those with Bahamian, European ancestry, or those who have lived there for a long time and really embody that Key West spirit. Historically, many Black Bahamians settled in Bahama Village, adding to the cultural mix. Being a conch is a badge of honor.
It's like a whole way of life.
Definitely. And then there's the Cuban influence, which we've already touched on. It's impossible to overstate how much Cubans have shaped Key West. It's in the food, the music, the art, even the politics. Key West has had Cuban mayors, and it played a role in the Cuban independence movement. It's a testament to their enduring impact.
Key West sounds like a true melting pot of cultures.
It is. The city motto is one human family, which really sums it up. The population's only around 26,000, but there's so much diversity. English, American, Cuban, German, Irish, you name it, it's there.
Amazing. And of course, there's the military side of Key West.
Yeah, it's been a military post since 1823, nicknamed the Gibraltar of the West. Today, you've got Naval Air Station Key West, or NAS Key West, a major training site for naval aviation. It includes the Truman Annex, where the Fleet Sonar School used to be, and where Truman's little White House is located. And then there's Trumbo Point Annex, which is now Coast Guard Sector Key West. Fort Zachary Taylor is another reminder of that military legacy.
So much to see.
I know. Once you're there, you'll want to explore, so here's a tip. The Conch train and the Old Town trolley tours are great ways to get around Old Town and learn about the history. You can also rent bikes or scooters, which is a fun way to experience the island vibes.
Good advice. So as you're cruising down the overseas highway, remember you're not just heading to a beautiful beach town. You're heading to a place with a fascinating history, a vibrant culture, and a spirit of resilience that's hard to match. It's a place where pirates, presidents, and refugees have all left their mark. Keep an eye out for the unique architecture, the lively atmosphere, and those stunning ocean views.
And don't forget about those sunsets.
Absolutely. From its humble beginnings as a bone cay to its bold declaration as the Contrapublic, Key West is a place that defies expectations.
And as you explore, think about this. How will Key West, with its history of adaptation and its deep connection to both nature and culture, face the challenges of the future? Climate change, tourism, preserving its unique identity, these are all big questions. Maybe your visit will give you some answers. Enjoy your deep dive into Key West.
And enjoy that drive. We'll see you in the next deep dive.